If I told you there's a 99.9% chance your entire reality was fake, that everything you've ever experienced was happening inside a computer program and I could prove it, would you want to know? I'm Len Cook and this is the Maverick Mind, and today we're exploring whether we're living in a computer simulation, and by the end of this video, you might think that we probably are. And if nothing else, you're never going to see the world the same way again. Now, we're going to be covering a lot of ground today. Some wild science, consciousness, technology, and big questions about reality. I'll need to touch on some concepts briefly to keep us moving, but if you want me to go deeper on anything, I'll be happy to also make dedicated videos of my own. Just let me know in the comments and I'll begin to work on that. But I'll warn you, once you start seeing this evidence, you can't unsee it. You might start questioning everything you thought you knew about what was real. Let's start off with the smart guy's argument. There's this really smart philosopher from Oxford named Nick Bostrom. He came up with what's basically a logic puzzle that's kind of hard to argue with. And that basically, based on the technology progression that we've had so far, and just look what we've done in the last 50 years, where are we going to be in another 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years? If we survive that long as a species, the technological advancements that we have then are going to seem science fiction compared to what we can comprehend now. Just imagine 1,000 years ago, what people could have seen our reality like compared to where we are now. It's going to seem so much even more dramatic 1,000 years from now. So keep that in mind as we talk about some of this stuff, and as the type of computer program simulation that would be required, and the potential that we could actually make something like this, or even more so, that someone already did. He basically, again, says that it has to be one of three things. One, that almost no civilizations get advanced enough to run realistic computer simulations of people and worlds. We're not all that far from it now, so keep that in perspective. Two, advanced civilizations can run these simulations, but they choose not to because they don't have an apparent interest in their history. We are obsessed with our history. Three, we're almost certainly living in one of those simulations right now. I think we're going to get into this a little bit more, but mathematically, from that perspective, the probability that we're living in a computer simulation is almost 100%. Because the probability that we're the first is astronomically small. Not impossible, but astronomically small. Think about it. We're getting really good already at creating realistic virtual worlds. And we're obsessed with simulating everything, weather, cities, even people's behavior. So options 1 and 2 seem unlikely, which again leaves us really with only option 3, that we're probably in a simulation. Now, I know that's not enough to confirm a mathematical approach, but it is the beginning of this journey. Now, there are so many parallels in how reality acts like a computer program. And here's where it really gets weird. The way reality works at the tiniest level, smaller than atoms, acts exactly like a smart computer program. You know how video games only show you full detail when you're looking at something? When you turn around in a game, it doesn't waste processing power rendering what's behind you. Why would it? Reality does the same thing. Scientists have done this experiment thousands of times for, I believe it's over 100 years now. Tested this in every conceivable way. And most people have heard of this as the slit experiment. Basically, they shoot tiny particles of light or other forms of matter through 2 slits in a wall. When nobody's watching, each particle somehow goes through both slits at the same time and creates this weird pattern. Let's take a pause for just a moment. If one particle, 2 slits, is going through both at the same time and somehow interacting with each other on the other side, creating a very distinct pattern on the wall. That defies conventional logic completely. Until we put some sort of detector on it, measure it, observe it, or even our conscious mind to observe it. Then all of a sudden, it collapses the wave function into a particle and acts just like we would expect it to. Go through one slit or the other, and the pattern on the other side of the wall is exactly what we'd expect to see. There is tons of videos on this called the slit experiment. If you're interested, take a look at it. But this is fundamental. This is part of our reality. It is not a debate. We don't know why, we don't know how, but we do know that this does exist. Let that digest for just a moment and the impact on that. When you're not looking at something, the particles that make that space up do not collapse into a physical structure. Only when observed or measured in some way does it collapse into a physical thing. That's exactly like a video game. So far, the similarities are uncanny. The next thing is that the universe has basically what we can consider pixels. Everything has a smallest possible size. Scientists call it the Planck length. It's incredibly tiny, but it exists. Think of it like pixels on your phone screen. If you zoom in far enough on any digital image, you'll see individual pixels. You can't have half a pixel, it's the smallest unit. Space itself works the same way. There's the smallest possible distance. Below that, the concept of distance stops making sense. That's exactly what you'd expect if reality was digital. The next thing to build on this is instant connections across the universe. Here's something that blew Einstein's mind. Of all people, he spent decades trying to sort this one out, even after he did some of the most amazing things that anyone has ever done. He called it spooky action at a distance, and it's basically quantum entanglement. You have two particles, once they're connected, scientists call it entangled. And if you change one of them, the other one changes instantly too, regardless of distance. It could be on either side of a galaxy, and instantaneously, you get the information on one, it changes the information on the other, which completely violates Einstein's rule of the speed of light, that information cannot move faster than the speed of light. Somehow this is communicating in some way, but it defies the physics as we understand it now. But if we're in a computer simulation, it's not spooky at all. It's just two things sharing the same file on the computer's memory. They're not sending signals across space, they're the same piece of information accessed from two different places. That makes a lot more sense. Then there's the programming evidence. The universe settings look deliberately chosen. Every video game has a setting: gravity, strength, physics, rules, how fast things move. Change these settings even slightly and the game breaks. The universe has the same thing. There are about 20 fundamental settings that control how reality works. The strength of gravity, how atoms stick together, the speed of light. Change any one of these by even a tiny amount, the universe breaks. Stars can't form, atoms fall apart, life becomes impossible. These settings are calibrated with impossible precision. It's like someone carefully tuned every parameter to make sure the universe would work and life could exist. In programming, we call this magic numbers, specific values that make the code work. The universe is full of them. The next thing is that reality has storage limits. Your phone can only store so many photos before it runs out of space. Your computer has memory limits, right? The universe has limits too. There's a maximum amount of information that can exist in any given space. There's a speed limit for how fast information can be processed. These aren't just random facts. They're exactly the kind of limits you'd expect if the universe was running on some kind of cosmic computer with hardware constraints. Then there's the consciousness mystery, the question that keeps scientists up at night. What is consciousness? What makes you feel like you? We can scan your brain, map every neuron, trace every chemical reaction, but we still can't explain why there's someone home inside your head experiencing all of this. We don't know where you are in you. If consciousness is your brain processing information, which most scientists do think it is, then there's no reason it couldn't happen in a computer too. Your awareness right now, reading these words, could exist just as authentically in a simulation as it would in a real world. Imagine if you were in a computer simulation and you could see and smell and taste and touch and feel everything as real as could be. How would you ever know the difference? Imagine if you were born into it. Then there's the copy problem. Imagine we could scan your brain and copy your consciousness into a computer. Would that digital version be you, or just a copy that thinks it's you? We're a lot closer to that than I think anyone even wants to think about. And if you could upload your consciousness into a computer, and then you ran a simulation of reality, and you did it very, very well, how would you know the difference? And here's the creepy part about this whole thing. The digital copy would have no way to know it wasn't the original. It would have all your memories, your personality, your sense of being you. You would still be you, and you wouldn't even know that this was a copy of yourself. What if we did this while your biological brain was still alive? Now there were two of you, both convinced you're the real one. If consciousness can be copied like a file, then maybe we were all copies of people who lived long ago, completely unaware that our entire existence is just reconstructed memories running in a simulation. Then there's the empty universe concept. Where is everybody? The universe is massive. Billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars. Many of those stars have planets. Some of those planets should have developed intelligent life by now, just by probability alone. We should be surrounded by alien civilizations. The universe should be teeming with life. It's called the Fermi paradox. But it's not. It's eerily quiet. And we seem to be alone. Unless we're not in the full universe. Maybe there's a localized simulation that only includes what's necessary for our story. Why waste processing power creating a billion galaxies if the characters never leave their home planet? Then there's the glitches, when reality doesn't quite add up. Now, if we're in a simulation, there should be glitches, imperfections in the system, right? Mistakes, things that don't quite line up. Ever heard of the Mandela effect? Thousands of people remembering the same wrong thing. Like the Berenstain Bears versus the Berenstain Bears, or thinking Nelson Mandela died in prison when he actually lived until 2013. The Nelson Mandela one, that one hit me because I did swear to God, I thought I heard he had died a long time before, and all of a sudden he reappeared, and I was very stunned to find out about that. The Mandela effect is a very intriguing thing. I'm not quite convinced it's real, but if simulation theory has substance, there's probably more to it than it seems. Maybe these are different types of evidence of system updates. When programmers change the historical database, some people's cached memories don't get fully updated. Have you ever had déjà vu? Could be considered a system lag. You know that feeling when you're absolutely certain you've lived a moment before? You know that feeling when you're absolutely certain you've lived a moment before? Déjà vu happens to almost everyone. Why? It's often considered a memory glitch, but maybe it's not just a memory glitch. Maybe the simulation occasionally runs a preview of what's about to happen. Maybe the simulation occasionally runs a preview of what's about to happen, and you're experiencing a cached version of the moment that technologically hasn't occurred yet. Dreams as alternate servers. Why do dreams sometimes feel more real than reality? Why do some people have reoccurring dream locations, places that they visit again and again and again in different dreams that they've never been to in real life? Maybe sleep is when your consciousness connects to different processing threads of the same system. Dream worlds might be alternative simulation environments where different rules apply. And then there's the technology proof that we're almost there ourselves. The computer power doubles every couple of years. Like how far we've come, from room-sized computers to supercomputers in our pockets in just decades so we can look at cat pictures. At this rate, we'll be able to simulate entire human brains within 20 to 30 years, full worlds with millions of conscious people within a century. This isn't really science fiction. We're a lot closer to this than you might think. And if we can do this, then any civilization, even a few hundred years ahead of us, definitely can, and for sure have. And if they're running millions of those simulations, the odds that we're the only one, we're the original one, is almost astronomically impossible. The odds that we're a simulation becomes almost certain. But look at another layer of this. We're already simulating everything. We already simulate entire weather systems. economies, even galaxies. Video games create worlds with realistic physics and AI characters that seem almost alive. Governments run massive simulations to predict wars, test economic policies, and model how millions of people will behave. We're not just getting better at making things look real, we're getting better at making those behave realistically real as well. Now, if you've been doing the math on this and keeping track, there is enough correlation between the nature of reality and the way the computer systems work, the potential and growth of technology that we are already working on, that this seems very possible. No one has any way to have a definitive proof. Maybe. We're going to look into that in some future videos. But if it is true, then what does that mean? And are there cheat codes? If you look at reality today, there definitely appears to be a few people in our reality who have figured out the cheat codes. So if you're starting to think we might be in a simulation, you basically have three options. Ignore it, pretend this doesn't matter, focus on daily life, but ignoring a possibility doesn't make it less true. Freak out. Don't recommend this one. Decide nothing matters if it's not real. But this misses the point completely. Get conscious. Realize that whether we're in base reality or a simulation, your experiences, relationships, and choices still matter. Keep in mind, only the third option leads anywhere good. So what does it mean? If we are living in a simulation, some interesting possibilities open up. Maybe reality is more interactive than we think, like a really sophisticated video game that responds to how aware and engaged you are. Maybe consciousness is the key variable. The more conscious you become, the more interesting your experience and your game gets. And so if reality is a code, then awareness might be your access level. And this idea isn't actually new. It's been around forever in different forms. Ancient Hindu texts talk about the world being Maya, an illusion. Buddhism talks about waking up from the dream. Plato wrote about people mistaking shadows on a cave wall for reality. Different cultures, same basic insight. The world isn't what it appears to be, and awakening means seeing through the illusion. We're just now describing it in modern technological terms. Then that runs into the creator question. Who's running this? If we're in a simulation, someone built it, someone's running it, someone chose the rules that govern our lives. Are these scientists studying consciousness? Artists creating digital worlds? Maybe they're future humans who got so advanced they decided to simulate their own past. Maybe it's some future kid in high school that got a C because I'm pretty sure he probably could have done a little better of a job. From our perspective, being capable of creating entire consciousness realities would be indistinguishable from God's. But if we are simulated, maybe our simulators are also simulated by someone even more advanced. And maybe it goes up forever, simulations all the way up. Because think about it the other way. If we become technologically advanced enough, we could create simulations of living now with conscious beings that believe they're real now, living in just as real of a world 1,000 years from now. But why would we want to? Well, think about the time period that we're living in right now. This is the time where we've gone from computers really not existing to general intelligence on AI coming in a decade or two. We're at a very, very interesting time period of humanity and our existence. If any future civilization was going to simulate reality, now would be the time that they would be very fascinated to understand how we transition from a non-technological world to the full technological world. Would it not be? Would you, if you were that advanced civilization, would you not want to know exactly what it was like to live in the time period we are right now? Which makes the whole simulation theory that this is a simulation even more probabilistic, given that if there was any time period of history that you'd be very interested in learning about, it would be now. But it stands to reason they would have simulations of pretty much every time period. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter where in the chain we are. Your experiences, your relationships, your capacity to grow and love, all of this is equally real at every level. Now, to answer some of the doubters, I'm one of them too. I don't believe this flat out, but I'm very curious about it because there is a lot of compelling information and kind of supporting this theory. And I've only just touched on it. And if there is more interest in this, I'll create a series about this. I'm fascinated on this subject. But some people will say that consciousness can't be simulated. Some people say consciousness is special, that a computer could never be truly conscious, just pretend to be. But this assumes consciousness is somehow magical rather than just really complex information processing. Most neuroscientists disagree. If consciousness emerges from complex brain activity, then sufficiently complex computers could be conscious too. It would take way too much computer power is the next argument. Others arguing that simulating a whole universe require more computing power than exists in the universe. But simulations don't need to model every atom. They only need to model what's being observed. Just like that quantum experiment that we just talked about. Most of the universe could be stored as compressed data, only rendered in full detail when needed. Also, with the advent of quantum computers, it's theoretically possible with something very, very small, you could actually replicate all the quantum effects of an entire universe in our lifetime. What actually changes if this is true is the next argument. Not necessarily anything. So what if we are in a simulation? Does anything actually change about how we should live life? Whether this reality runs on quantum fields or quantum processors, you're still the most sophisticated thinking and feeling system you'll ever encounter. Your capacity to love, creativity, growth, and connection is real regardless of the underlying hardware. That's not a bug. That's the whole point. And the next one is the real question. If we are in a simulation, there's one more question worth asking. Every system has shortcuts. Every program has hidden features. Every game has cheat codes. And if consciousness really is the key variable, if awareness grants access to deeper levels of the system, then maybe the question isn't whether we can escape the simulation. Maybe the question is, how do we learn to play the game better? Whether this is base reality or not, in the most sophisticated simulation ever created, you're here for a reason. And that reason might be to learn to level up.